Have you ever heard of a rap feud in which two London gangs began fighting, sending 42s on crash-out missions, getting destroyed in airstrikes, and killing friends in the middle of the street? Today, we're going to tell you the entire insane tale. There are many different sets in Peckham and Brixton, but the two main crews that turned the streets into a war zone were the Peckham Boys and the Gas Gang from Brixton. Peckham and Brixton are two districts in South London whose feud dates back to the 1950s, but the violence reached a crazy level in the 2000s. The Peckham Boys began in the 1980s, but by the 2000s, they had divided into other factions. Almost every age in the neighborhood had its own crew. Thus, there were the Peckham Boys and the younger Peckham Boys, also known as YPB, the younger Peckham Boys, also known as YPB, and the Peckham Kids, also known as PK. Although it's a little unclear, all of the Peckham Boy teams were in the news in the 2000s because they were going out on the streets like crazy. In 2000, two YPB affiliates fatally stabbed another man with a broken beer bottle, and people began to realize that Peckham was something else entirely. The Peckham sets began renaming themselves, such as Don't Underscore and Spare No One Peckham Young Gunners Shoot Instant. Around us, we were making noise for putting major pressure on the ops back then. It was way easier to get guns in London, and in 2004, the Peckham Boys were beefing heavily with a crew called the Ghetto Boys. The Ghetto Boys had ties all over South London, but most of the crews were from Lewisham, and they had been beefing with Peckham for decades. Most people weren't paying attention to the drama, but then in 2004, the Peckham Boys and Ghetto Boys ran into each other outside the Urban Music Awards and started shooting. A woman caught a straight bullet to the chest, and the only reason she survived is 'cause the bullet hit the underwire in her bra. The cops booked the Ghetto Boy affiliate for the shooting, but that was only the beginning. In 2006, the Ghetto Boys spun on the Peckham Boys and shot up their hood twice. So the Peckham Boys allegedly clapped back and killed two dudes in Brixton who had ties to the Ghetto Boys. The Ghetto Boys were also running an area called New Cross, so the Peckham Boys stood on them too and hit somebody with a bottle the voters was eating up every day in that same week. 40 Peak Boys rolled into New Cross with knives and stabbed a dude named Jason Gale Brent to death. Jason used to rep the Ghetto Boys, but left the streets after he had been stabbed. Before he was chilling on the block when the Peckham Boys pulled up, and the cops think they thought Jason was a different member of the Ghetto Boys, and that's when they brutally killed him. But Jason Gale Brandt wasn't the only dude who got stabbed that night. The Peckham Boys also slid into the Ghetto Boys territory in Deptford and stabbed another dude, but he survived. The Ghetto Boys weren't going to let Peckham punish him without clapping back, and the next day, they pulled up to a basketball court and Peckham and started shooting. Nobody got hit, but then in October 2008, the Ghetto Boys and Peckham Boys got into another shootout and killed an innocent woman. Nobody thought the violence was going to stop, but then the Peckham Boys and Ghetto Boys squashed the beef and started linking up. The Ghetto Boys and Peckham probably would have never made peace if a NOG from the Ghetto Boys named Sparks didn't get brutally killed by his own homie. Sparks was allegedly the dude calling the shots in the Ghetto Boys, but he was known for crashing out too. He allegedly murdered a dude outside the club in 2002. But the witnesses didn't show up to the trial, and the case got dropped. Sparks skated on the case, but then in 2006, he pushed it too far with his own crew and got killed for it. Sparks was tight with a dude named Delphin Nicholas, but Sparks stomped out Delphin's dad and stole his car. Delphin was locked up, but he smuggled in the phone and set up a fake weed deal for Sparks. When Sparks got to the spot where he was going to buy the weed, Delphin told Method after Sparks died. Trevor popped out and shot him to death. The Ghetto Boys then began dividing into other groups and stopped caring about their feud with Peckham, which was a significant event for Southeast London. However, the Peckham Boys were about to start a war that would make the drama of the Ghetto Boys seem insignificant. Peckham and Brixton had been at odds for years, but what really set off a wild wave of violence was when Brixton slapped two rappers from Peckham, Snap Capone and Nutty Snap. Capone was reputed to be one of the most insane men in Peckham, and during the track shots, he rapped, "I killed 2 and shot 20, and he hasn't been touched." The clinical headshots are excellent, and the night glove feeds make my eyes red like Cyclops. If I hit your whip, that's a write-off, and if I ride to your block, that's a death loss. Snip, according to rumors, Capone even shot and sexually assaulted one of his own friends. After a man named Benny allegedly stole Snap Capone's strap, Snap grabbed another gun and shot him. Fresh home from jail, I completed 4 summers calling for a meeting if the talking numbers. I'm not greedy. I feed all my youngsters, Snap stated on the track 4 summers later. I shot the cheese in his stomach after he stole my gun. I dig a stick on me like a sticker chest shot, since Capone is also accused of killing a guy named Mimer from a set called Mo. He allegedly self-snitched again on the same track as he wrapped up Life Steep. His heart was broken by the feed stop. Skirt, which is a vehicle chase with more firearms in an arcade chest shot, and split his liver. The way you rap, you are not that. Snip. In 2008, a Brixton group known as OC attempted to kill Peckham on Woolwich Road. OC, also known as organized crime, had strong ties to Gas Gang, the largest and most violent group in Brixton, which included a man named Don Boost and another shooter named Snap Capone Nutty. Capone and Nutty were both playing for Peckham in the rap game, Snip. After it happened, some guys from OC did Snap Capone Nutty and rapped, "And you're rushing around the store pretending you're purchasing something." Capone and Nutty ducked into a store and were unharmed, but an innocent person became entangled in a predicament and died. Then something young sighs. He believes he can try coming up on your block and barking it off, but when I get there, I'm going to turn something up. T-Snap and Stigs from the Peckham set PY Clap back on the track, real riders, and rapped you at 2 turners and never turn anything. Capone and Nutty survived when Brixton slid on them, but after the distance began to fly back and forth, Brixton slid on Peckham once more and killed a man named Terms. According to rumors, someone gave the shooters Terms' location and they pulled up to his crib. When Terms walked outside, the shooters were already waiting for him and left him dead in the street. Some of the sets that were cool with Peckham started rocking with the ops as well. Obi-Wan switched sides and joined forces with Brixton, but one of their members was stabbed to death right away. Then the guy from Obi pulled the fake gun at the ops, but after they realized it wasn't real, they chased him down and killed him. The police were attempting to take down all the gangs, even preventing rappers from performing. Back then, Giggs was a major force in the rap scene, and he ripped a peekaboo set called SN1, also known as Spare No One. He had been rapping for a while, but his career took a turn for the worse when he was imprisoned on gun-related charges. However, after he returned home, Giggs released some of the sexiest mixtapes in London and was making SN1 famous. He also announced the end of the Ghetto Boy war when he rapped Ghetto Vicum. "I'm not on that dead beef, so I holler at my." Smiley SN1 released an entire project with him, but they continued to work in the streets and receive black balls in the rap game, so he released the song F the Industry and rapped it up, saying, "I'm going to give it to him raw." _ The industry guys weren't the only ones who were terrified of Giggs and his group. In 2009, the police began to pay closer attention to SN1 after they allegedly executed one-off members who had betrayed them. "They won't let us in and we'll be kicking in the door. This is our game, now our turf, and we should be urinating on the ground." The cops still couldn't stop Giggs and SN1's momentum in the rap game, though, and in 2008, Giggs was the first rapper to ever win Best International Act at the Bet Hip Hop Awards. Giggs was even getting fans in America, but back in London, SN1 was putting major pressure on the ops a month after Giggs' homie, TMS, got killed outside of his crib by Brixton, as SN1 allegedly clapped back and killed a dude from Brixton's OC. Set called Sense was at a club in front of hundreds of people when someone walked right up and shot him to death. Nobody was ever booked for killing Sense, but pretty much everyone says someone from Peckham pulled the trigger on him right. After that is when SN1 allegedly executed their own member in the middle of the street. Big Larry rep Peckham and had ties to SN1, but after he fell out with them, he was shot in the back of his head, and his murder made headlines all over the city. Brixton and Peckham were making even more noise, cause the disses kept heating up while bodies were dropping in the trenches. Sneaky and White T from Gas Gang dropped a Peckham disc called R3 Style, so Peckham rappers used the same beat and clapped back at Brixton. On the track Pecky Side, Fucky Side, Peckham kept the pressure up in the booth with tracks like Reeker G and Police and Thief, but Brixton was clapping back with their own disses and really putting the beef in the spotlight. Brixton and Peckham were so signed onto each other that both areas became no-go zones for anyone who wasn't looking for smoke. The crews would crash out with 30 or 40 dudes carrying guns and knives, and getting anywhere near that could be a death sentence, even if you were just passing through. The rap distance took everything to another level, but then Peckham and Brixton's beef started cooling off because Peckham started having some crazy internal drama. There had already been a civil war in Peckham in the early 2000s, but in 2009, a new war sparked up after Snap Capone and his homie Tam allegedly killed a dude named Mimimer. Mimimer repped a set called Mo, aka Mandem, on Brandon. It's not clear why Snap Capone and Tam allegedly wanted him dead, but they both ended up beating the case, and one of their young homies went down for having the gun that was used on the hit, then shot. Instant took a big loss when Nutty got locked up on a gun charge. If he had just kept his head down and done the time, Nutty would have been back on the streets in a couple of years, but instead, he tried to get a young dude to take the fall, and everything went left. Nutty wanted a dude named Samuel Laguna to take the charge, but when Samuel Laguna said he wouldn't do it, someone pulled up and shot him to death in a whip and then set the car on fire. Nutty was hit with a 32-year sentence for setting the whole thing up, and another Peckham affiliate named CS got 4 years for torching the whip. Then Peckham went into a crazy internal war. One of the blocks that repum was a Leo estate, but in the late 2000s, they started beefing with the rest of Peckham and started a crew called the Let's Z's. In September 2010, a dude from Peckham named Ties wrecked his motorcycle and died during the chase. Later that day, somebody set up a memorial for him, and Lil Grim from Liam got shot there while he was paying his respects. Snap, Capone's older homie, got hit with 35 years for killing Lil Grim. And then a couple of months later, a dude named Vesa from Crane Block got shot to death, and 2 of his homies got stabbed. Block was in Peckham too, but the Civil War meant nobody was safe. And after Vesta got killed, the young dudes on the block started handing out stop snitching papers around the hood to warn everyone not to work with the cops, even though they allegedly used to slide on Brixton together. The Peckham boys also began to feud with the guys on Woolwich Road. The events in Woolwich are among the most bizarre tales in London. Some of the Woolwich boys were working hard in the trenches before being recruited by ISIS to fight for them in the Middle East. The Woolwich boys were converting to Islam and receiving training to actually go to war, and 16 of them left the neighborhood to fight for IS in Syria. Linking up with terrorists was a bad idea for a lot of reasons, and all 16 of the Woolwich boys ended up getting killed in an airstrike right after they landed in Syria. While Peckham was beefing internally, the drama with Brixton started dying off. In 2010, a dude named Sylvester Akapala was shot and killed in Heron House in Peckham, and at first rumors were going around that Gas Gang was involved with the hit. But later the news broke that Sylvester was killed by someone else from Peckham and was just another victim of the Civil War. Gang was starting to put major pressure on their ops though, and in 2010, they stabbed a member of a set called Trust No One aka TN1. Then 2 days later, TN1 tried to go to a chicken spot in Brixton, and 25 gas gang members pulled up and surrounded the restaurant. The situation was looking bad for TN1, but luckily for them, the cops showed up before gas gang could kill anyone. That wasn't the only time gas gang slid on TN1 though, and in 2010 they also murdered a dude from there named Lil Zach. Lil Zach also had ties to a set called a BM aka All About Money, and they started beefing with Gas Gang too after Lil Zach got killed. Gas Gang was tearing the city up like crazy, and the cops said they were involved with almost 80% of the violent crime in Brixton. The dudes in Peckham were just as wild though, and that's what made their beef so deadly. Both sides had a ton of crashes who were always ready to slide, and they turned the area into one of the scariest places in London. But after Peckham started having internal beef and killing their own homies, and Brixton sparked a bunch of drama with other crews, Peckham and Brixton ceased constantly sliding on one another. Brixton and Peckham had the most bizarre feud in London, but such violence was short-lived. Both sides lost many members, and once leaders began being assassinated and imprisoned, it was only a matter of time until everything fell apart.